Buenos días a todos. I would like to introduce my wonderful panel. Let's start from Niko, co-founder and CEO of Bob W. Please come across. Then we have Christian Saller, general partner from HV Capital. Ciao, Christian. Guten Morgen. And then we have Markus, co-founder and CEO of Roadsurfer. Guten Morgen too. And then Victor, co-founder and CEO of Plum. Ciao. Here we go. Okay, so we are very excited to be here and to have a European panel. I hope you are going to enjoy what we're going to discuss of how we're going to tackle Europe as a whole. It's very important for BBVA Spark because this 2025 has been a milestone year for us stepping into Europe. And I would like to start the discussion around all the various paradoxes that we have that we find on one hand fascinating, on the other hand provided problem for companies to scale in Europe. We have a world-class talent, but then we have several barriers that we encounter. So I would like to start by asking a question to Christian. It's always good to start with investor. So Christian, Europe is a diverse and complex that we know. It's a rich of we have rich of talents and creativity, and also we have some data that tells us that we're talking about 8 trillion of GDP of the ecosystem. So what key factors must align for this projection to be realized? So basically, how can we attack that enormous ecosystem that we have?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me here at this beautiful venue. Very nice. I mean, if we compare Europe to the US, of course, we have a lot of history, we have a lot of talent, we have a lot of science and so on. I think if you look at the economies, what we really lack is the companies that were founded over the last 10, 20, 50 years and that have really become global market leaders and big. And if you look at, for example, in the US, the top 10 companies by market cap, I think 8 of them were founded in the last 50 years. And if you look at the same in Europe, I think none of them, or maybe one of them, was founded in the last 50 years. So we have a really big gap, and this is a gap we need to close. And I think probably a lot of you are aware there was this Draghi report 1.5 years ago that discussed what Europe needs to do to become a leading region in innovation. And this Draghi report put a lot of emphasis on startups, scale-ups, innovation, technology, building the champions of the future. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that since then, not a lot has happened. So I think the main thing we need to sort of realize the potential that we have in Europe is to really have a clear commitment from everyone, but in particular, really the governments and the countries in making innovation and startups and scale up a top priority for the countries. And then there's, of course, a lot of sort of secondary things that we need to focus on, and we can talk about that later. But this 100% commitment that we should have, we are lacking at the moment, and I think this is the main priority.
Thank you, Christian. So, in essence, it's not only capital that is the gap that divides us from the US. And we try to tackle this, and it will be really good to understand from a perspective of the founders how you guys, what do you think is a real advantage to of starting here in Europe for a start, and what are the biggest barriers that we still face of building attractive businesses in Europe? You guys build businesses in different segments, so we are very lucky here to see the perspective from scale-ups now, you guys built from a prop tech perspective to mobility and to fintech, and it would be really good to understand from your point of view what would be, what are the barriers that you guys are still facing? It's capital we know, so it's the regulations, mindset, it's talent. What can you tell us? Shall we start from Victor?
Yeah, hi. I'm Victor. I'm a founder of Plum. We're the fintech on the panel. We help people automatically save and invest their money. But I think Europe is almost like it's a blessing and a curse in the sense like when you look at our experience, particularly, Europe is multiple markets. We started in the UK, and there was Brexit, but we still had to get regulated in Europe. But then every market, you need to figure out the local, not necessarily local regulation, but there's a local payment method that you need to make the money flow easier in your app. There's a different kind of like KYC capability per country, or like, and you need a different method, a different document upload. And all of these things are like, it's the same product that you're trying to take everywhere, but you need to localize, right? So in some ways, we were discussing earlier, right? It's a benefit because when an American comes to enter, they have to figure all of this out. But it also like means that in order for you to materialize this big market of 400,000 people, 400 million people across Europe, you need to figure out every market and every language and every payment method, KYC method, etc. per market. So that slows you down, right? So look, I think but it also builds the ability to understand and like replicate how you go to different markets, which means if you want to go then to Asia or America or Latin America, hopefully you're better prepared than an American company that's always been there, right?
But probably in your case is the legal fragmentation, so that you have in, the UK common law is like the US, so yeah, we are all happy. But then there are all other jurisdictions that,
It's the jurisdictions and what happens.
In fintech, I mean.
Yeah, and what happens locally, like, even the payment method, right? It's something you need to think about in every market, right? You have Ideal in Netherlands, and different ways of moving money. And so it just creates more and more friction. And that's what kind of slows you down, right? You can't be like an American company, boom, I have 300 million people to market to, right? But I think you build a skill set in the process.
Thank you, Victor. Markus, what is your perspective on these challenges that we are all facing?
I think marketing first. So my company that I founded was roadsurfer, is roadsurfer. We're the largest camper van / auto travel company in the world, I would say. So even we have a big station in Barcelona. If someone wants to go camping, you can rent from here as well. So, and coming to your question, we own our vehicles. So we started off the business in 2017 purchasing vehicles for more than €1 million. So we needed capital right away. We needed debt right away because you cannot fund that with equity. But long story short, we started in Germany, and that's the beauty, at least in Europe. A German market is big enough to start a business and to grow it to a certain size. And then you get the idea, hey, there's Europe, and let's scale. And in our case, we need debt, we need to finance vehicles, we need to register vehicles, we need to have operations on the ground. So you go to the second country in Europe, and you find out there is no Europe. Everything is different. And it's all the regulations, but it's VATs, it's just whatever you want to do. You have to follow different rules. And then you find out there is European rules, which you can follow, but the locals do not even know their own laws. So you fight with local governments about how to set up a business. So we educate, and this is where we have the challenges in Europe, that each market has a big size. You can start it, you can grow, but if you want to grow above the borders, it feels like really going into a new country and just building it up again. And this is what we learned at the beginning, and then we went to the US. It is a bit different, it is a bit easier, but at the end in Europe, it is also easier to target the people. You have different kind of people that work differently. You can do much better and much more focused marketing. So I guess there's a lot of bad topics and complications, but also some positive things about Europe.
Okay, cool. I would expect the target was mainly on the DACH region first and then expand.
It was actually DACH region. It was Munich and Frankfurt first, and then it was DACH region. And the weird part in our world is what you do with a camper van, you don't rent it in Barcelona and stay here. So what we do, our customers, they take it and drive somewhere else. So you drive with a German license plate in another country, and you get problems because of people traveling with your van somewhere else, which is the core of the business.
Yes.
So yeah, we're driving around apartments.
Yeah, cool. I think it's only fair. I mean, it's my assumption that these fantastic founders and businesses that they built are well known to everyone. So it seems only fair to have the little 2 minutes marketing introduction to Victor as well before we move to Niko. Tell us about Plum. I mean, I assume everybody knew, but let's not assume.
Yeah, Plum is a fintech born out of the UK, but the idea is that we humans have what I call negative inertia with your money, so you don't take action with your money. So we built a system where you connect your bank account, we see the data in your account, and we have an automated rule that starts bringing money into the Plum ecosystem. And then we believe in fair finance, and we want to make sure that you make the top rate of return on your cash, have access to investment products at very low rates, but all of this being automated so you don't have to like proactively be doing much. And then the final piece that we're building that I'm excited about is that and it's been part of our history from day one, that we're a conversational species. We want to talk to someone about our money, and maybe more in Europe than in the UK to feel comfortable. So we're building this AI capability with LLMs so that people can have basically eventually financial advice about how to manage their money, given that we also already see where they have money in their current account, what they're doing with it, and we have the platform of where they would invest the money. So that's, I believe in financial services, like kind of the final frontier in some way, because you'll be able to have like a proper personalized conversation with anyone around their money, right? And get them to do the right stuff.
Thank you, Victor. So, Niko, before we tackle what are the challenges in Europe that you face and you are facing, tell us about Bob W.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us here. Much appreciated. And thanks for you guys
welcome.
taking the time as well. So Bob W is the answer to the Airbnb generation that's growing up. We are a tech-powered apart hotel operator that has 1/7 of the employees of a comparable hotel selling for comparable prices, and 6/7 is the technology. We're one of Europe's fastest-growing hospitality operators. We have properties in 19 cities across 11 countries in Europe, and really are the answer to this, this modern generation of traveler that's mixing business with pleasure, spending a longer time on the road. And it isn't just about the hotel needs or the 1 year plus rental needs, but this massive gray area in between, and we're professionalizing it. And so that's Bob W in a nutshell. Obviously, from a European perspective and a growth perspective, we're in hospitality. We have physical products. We lease or manage basically hotel licensed buildings. And that means that we are very heavily tied into different countries and need to operate within the rules. Now, first of all, starting from an optimist's perspective, I think Europe we're in a great place for a couple of things. First of all, we have immense diversity, which is something that is a beautiful thing and has been proven over and over again in disruptive business models and in economic settings, that diversity equals more successful companies and more successes, particularly in the startup world. So I think we have a great starting point for that. So there is positives to being different.
I like the sustainability angle as well.
Yeah, often we always, like from the Nordics perspective, we always joke around that, Finns are the engineers and Swedes are the marketers and Danes are the tradesmen who sell it around, and Norwegians obviously fund it all. But that we have this kind of beautiful diversity across Europe, and we've also, I think, are at a turning point of really waking up to the fact that we have a ticking time bomb on our hands from a demographics perspective, aging society. We have big bills to pay to upkeep these kinds of societies, and we understand that continuing with the status quo is not good enough. So I think that inflection point is happening, and of course this will have to be pushed by a lot of different actions, both, you mentioned capital, regulation, mindset perspective. So capital, we talked about it, that there's definitely a need for increasing particularly late-stage funding and an appetite to grow these businesses further within Europe and not just be acquired by, well, mainly, it seems like American entities for the large part.
Well, we have a long-standing topics of Europeans selling too early. We still hasn't tackled, where we've been blamed from, not blamed, but from the US. They said, "Oh, you guys are not building unicorns. You're selling too early." But then I think we need another panel to tackle that.
Perhaps that's in the mindset aspect. I mean, again, there is a lot more maturity now entering the capital markets, and one of them is obviously venture debt for growth companies, and different solutions are becoming more commonplace, which is important and complementing to our growth. Regulation perspective, we're in 10 countries. One country we have to have a front desk. Literally, don't need to have people. We need to have a freaking front desk. It can be empty, but we have to have it. It's regulation. In another country,
without the person on it.
Yeah. And
can we name and shame the jurisdiction?
We name no names. We want to work happily with everybody. But we have these
you're right.
peculiarities of regulation, like Markus has with camper vans, across the board, which some of it absolutely doesn't make sense and takes away from the core business of creating value, both for us and then indirectly through taxpayers and what have you. And then finally, I would say, mindset perspective. There was an Estonian newspaper. We started in Estonia. We had nothing to do with Estonia, but we found our first property there. And a prominent journalist asked, "What's the difference between mindset of Nordics and Estonians?" And what came to my mind instantly is Estonians, which, by the way, came from the Soviet bloc, so they don't have that legacy thinking before. We said, we're actually very, very similar, but actually what you have is we as Nordics, and I would say more broadly in Europe, are focused more on the past and what we have, versus the Estonians are focused on the future, even though we share similar values. And I think that's the mindset difference that we need to shift in Europe is we need to focus on the opportunities that we can create. Status quo is not going to solve the demographic challenges and what have you. We got to try something new. But I think we're at a tipping point, and if we continue at it, we have an opportunity to change the European landscape.
Thank you. Christian, you are such an important player in the European ecosystem. HV has been capital has been supporting companies for a long time. You're one of the most senior GP, GP in HV Capital. So you have a full perspective of different cycle. So, I've seen from the credit crunch to COVID and all of that. But leaving that aside, so how can Europe, in your opinion, in your experience, you guys invest in different segments, you have a full overview. How can Europe overcome the regulatory fragmentation without using the diversity that is a top point for us and a characteristic of the markets, and how local system can collaborate to make this happen and be more connected, more resilient, and so on? And tell us about HV as well, because obviously I want to hear it too.
I mean, as you said, we are like a European technology investor, investing from seed to Series C, have around 3 billion under management, and invest in a broad range of sectors, everything from consumer internet to deep tech. About Europe and diversity, I mean, I agree with Victor that the diversity we have in Europe is a beautiful thing from a cultural perspective and from a human capital perspective. And I mean, I started this week in Munich and then was in London and now in Barcelona, and it's amazing to see the diversity that we have in within an hour of flight from one country to the other. I think from a business and regulatory perspective, there's no value in having diversity. And it just hinders our companies to develop their full potential. And again, I think there's a strong need for Europe to recognize the importance of being competitive to be able to not fall behind on a global scale. And I mean, I realized that again yesterday. I was listening to an American VC podcast, and I mean, they talk about the US and they talk about China. They don't talk about Europe. Europe for them is sort of a continent where you go to have good food and to have a nice holiday, but not a place to do business. And that's something we have to change. And I think we as entrepreneurs and VCs have to work on that, and that includes everything from sort of having the big vision to really build big companies, thinking on a global scale, having the capital to support it. But again, it needs to also happen from a regulatory, political country perspective. So getting rid of all regulation that is local, that's just like holding companies up instead of enabling them, tearing down borders between countries, losing this mindset. I mean, I talk a lot to politicians, in particular in Germany right now, and when they talk about the ecosystem, they always think about, okay, and what can I get out for Germany? Which is understandable, but it's not helpful. We should think as Europe and make Europe successful again, and get rid of everything that's not supportive in getting to this target.
And the politicians, instead of listening, what they're doing, they try to tax GPs and carry, and so here we go. I totally agree with Christian. And before we jump into the next question to our wonderful founders, I'm actually going off script a little bit, and I would like to know if anyone from the audience has got a question or has any experience that would lead to an interesting question on the difficulties and the challenges that we experience in Europe for our founders. See if I can see you. We have one. Yes, I can see you. I can see your belly. Wait a second, we can hear. Because if I wait for question at the end, everybody's gonna get up to the sandwich and the drinks, so I'd rather do it now.
Good to see you, Donatella.
Ciao.
Everyone on the panel. One question in particular to Christian. I'm German, I'm living for a long time in Iberia. I like that I don't feel so much regulation over there. That was one of the reasons why I left Germany. Question to you, I also see a bigger and bigger gap happening between the US and what's happening in Europe. Also, if you have a look at the last 10 years, GDP in the US doubled, Europe stayed flat. When you have a look right now in everything that happens in AI and technology, there's this increasing gap. Do you see any chance that we can follow up and that we can close it and compete in the future with the US and with China?
I think there is an opportunity partly because of what's happening in the US right now. I mean, we do have in the US a government that, on the one hand, is very focused and very supportive to the ecosystem, but on the other hand, makes it for international people a bit unpleasant to actually work and live in the US. And so I think we have a opportunity to bring back a lot of talent from the US and to attract more talent to Europe that would have gone to the US couple of years ago. But for this, we also have to create the right work environment. So I think, like, if I talk to Europeans living in the US, for example, they all like sort of the social cohesion, the focus on sustainability, the quality of living that we have in Europe. But they're all concerned about the regulation and the red tape. And so if we are able to change the one side that's sort of holding us up right now without changing the other side, I think there is an opportunity. Another opportunity I see in sort of the more deep tech area. So there's a lot of actually really good innovation coming out of European universities. And again, it's a field where there will probably be like a brain move from the US to Europe with everything that's going on at US universities right now. But again, we have to become better in taking this technology, these innovations that are coming out of university and commercializing them and making companies out of them. So I do think we have the chance to do something, but we have to act on it.
I just wanted to add one thing, and because we talk about AI, US has some major companies that are leading in these foundation models like OpenAI and Anthropic and stuff. Even though DeepMind was founded in Europe, it could have been the one leading, but it's not. But I think nonetheless, I think the fact that these foundation models started in the US and we will use them, it doesn't mean that all innovation that is built on top of them has to happen in the US or anywhere, right? I think all of this stuff is accessible. It allows you to innovate it at a different speed, right? So I don't think the fact that that's happened there means that all innovation continues to be there. And as long as you can leverage these things for your business, and that's where the mindset is. Like if you have the mindset to build something big, you can still build it from anywhere, and it's becoming easier and easier to build from anywhere, right?
Maybe Lovable is an example of
Lovable is an example.
Stockholm AI ecosystem as well.
Yeah, so that's it.
I'm not going to throw in the defense subject into this, so otherwise we're not going to finish. So we don't have much time left, and I really would like to cover a couple of more questions to our amazing founders, and then hopefully we might have time for one more question at the end. So, Victor, Plum raised 15 million in venture debt from BBVA to expand in Europe. You choose venture debt instead of more equity. I know why. But do you see this as a sign of a more mature European ecosystem where founders can scale without getting diluted too much? Is the asset class more well-known because there are more players in the market, good players, because it takes, as we know, forever to build a reputation, a moment to destroy it. So what is your view on that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we were very happy to be having venture debt from BBVA and partnering with them. Look, I think definitely the ecosystem has evolved, and when you reach a certain, scale and profitability, it makes more sense to take venture debt and avoid dilution, extend your runway, and be able to do more before you decide how to proceed on the financing. But I think from my perspective, like, I've been building Plum for 8 years. I definitely feel that from when I raised my first round, like whatever, 1 million pre-money, and now people are raising seed rounds at, like 10, 20, etc. The ecosystem's evolved dramatically, right? And I think it's also a global ecosystem. I don't think it's, close to like US players either, right? I think they all have presence here, and the venture debt is a key part of the whole ecosystem. So I think the ecosystem, there could always be more, but I think it's a lot easier to find capital in this ecosystem from when we started, for sure.
Thank you, Victor. And obviously you chose the best, we know that. Okay. So, Markus, don't make me laugh, I'm going to start coughing. Roadsurfer operates in 20 European countries, as you mentioned before, with a fleet of over 10,000 camper vans. And how scaling a capital-intensive business like yours across Europe is not easy. It requires a lot of discipline, thoughts, good partners to help you do that. And what was the hardest market to enter? And what did it teach you about doing business in Europe overall?
The hardest market to enter from, let's say, legal perspective and also from operations was Portugal, just because they do not comply with any laws that we have in Europe and they just do their own worlds. But I was just thinking about how we opened Spain. I think the toughest topic for us to open Spain was opening a bank account. I mean, everything was in place, but the bank account, I had to fly here twice and it didn't even work at the end. And so this is almost in every single European country. Bank account is the complicated thing, most complicated thing in founding something and getting up speed. In the US, it took, I think, 2 hours to found the company itself. So that's a totally different world. But besides Portugal, and we have roughly 500 million of financing. That's what the camper van fleet is worth and what needs to be financed. We started with debt, straightforward debt. Now we have large debt facilities. We have asset-backed structures that go globally. We have mezzanine financing. And then at one point you think about, okay, what kind of other layers you need maybe for the operational side of things. And then, yeah, venture debt was on the table. But to be fair, like 3 years ago, we looked at it at first and it felt like a bit more crazy kind of financing with a lot of cowboys out there, but not really too professionalized, at least what it felt. You talk to people and they feel like, are those the right partners? So anyways, long story short, I guess at least I do not know too many, let's say, banks or let's say large institutional investors that do venture debt. So this is a reason it is a good instrument for financing if you're at the profitability sector, but you need to have serious partners. And there is not too many, at least in Europe. The American market, I do not know. So that was the choice for us to add that to our, let's say, capital structure because it is quite complex and complicated, but it is definitely what made a lot of sense, yeah.
Well, it takes time and work to learn the businesses. Not a lot of providers do that. We, BBVA Spark, we really spend time to learn about our founders and the business that they're building. And only to do that, you can manage to become a complement to equity and work together to scale these wonderful businesses that you guys are building. Thank you, Markus. Niko, Bob W has grown fast, very fast. So with apartment in about 19,
but
you see, I tell you it's fast, so I just, yeah, I missed two. And 19 European cities. How, can you tell us more of how is your path to grow versus profitability and how you plans are for Europe?
Sure. We got started in 2019 and the world was a very different place. I don't think...
Still young, Niko, still young.
It was, I don't think anybody in the startup ecosystem brought up the term profitability. I had no idea what it meant at the time. You just cared about growth, and that was such a big element of your business and just the pure singular focus. So then we did our A round in 2021, and then A round in 2022, and that's when the world started sliding. 2/3 of the equity disappeared off the market for growth companies, and all of a sudden we were having to shift from growth at any cost to actually looking at profitability. And I have my lovely German co-founder to thank for it. He's the sort of German stereotype on steroids. I would have probably driven this thing off a cliff, not caring about profitability until it was too late. But he came from an old school world, and I think this was a really challenging time for a lot of companies that might have really had even the viability.
Seb keeps you in check.
He does. Yeah. I love the guy so much that I replicated the model at home and married a wife that's basically a prettier version of my anyway.
Knowing you, I totally believe that.
But the point is that there's been a massive shift on the focus from top line to viable businesses. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's a great thing. Probably there were a few casualties during this shift that maybe didn't have to die, but they just weren't able to change the ship around early enough, and we were very lucky to do so. And today that puts us in a very nice, fast-growing yet on a profitable basis, which keeps us alive and growing, which is better than being dead, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a big, massive sign of we have to end. But I would like to see if there is one more question. I'm sure, and one more. We have room for one more question to our founders or to Christian. Anyone? I can't see. Okay, you want us to end. I won't take it personally. Okay. Thank you very much for listening to our panel. I thank Victor, Markus, Niko, and Christian to be here with us. And I encourage you to explore Plum. Take a holiday in with a road surfer. Stay Bob W. Now they are expanded enough for you to find how beautiful they are. And find us all out there for a chat, so you can expand your... If you're too shy to ask questions, you can have Christian to ask a question there. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you, guys.